What's going on, everyone? Darkside Phil here, and welcome to another edition of the Hateful Truth video game review series, where you can get maximum truth, minimum bullshit regarding your new releases and my honest feelings about them. So today we're going to talk about a game that has a lot to live up to. It's part of an existing franchise that, at its inception, through its first few releases, actually kind of redefined an entire genre of gaming. And when this happened, they became classics. Games that in the future everyone will always hold other games of this particular type up to that standard. And so it's very hard when you have that kind of a history to your IP to live up to that level of quality, that level of hype. Okay? That being said, I think a lot of the times what happens is because we just remember nostalgically something from the past, that we unfortunately kind of bring down something that may be something of the present. And I'll explain what I mean by that during the course of this review. Today we are actually talking about the new survival horror game, Silent Hill Downpour, which I played on the Xbox 360. And so, Silent Hill Downpour. Going along the vein of all the previous Silent Hill games, it's going to be the basic plot. Somehow, this group of strangers end up getting warped into Silent Hill, and crazy shit starts happening, okay? In particular, the plot of Silent Hill Downpour follows Murphy Pendleton, who is an inmate being transferred from one prison to another by, and during this transfer, the bus, which is, full of prisoners, gets basically flipped over when the road to Silent Hill, which they need to pass through to get to this next prison that they're getting transferred to, is destroyed. Now, if you've played previous Silent Hill games, you've seen Silent Hill related things, this always seems to be like the same kind of a cliche thing. The road to Silent Hill is a big hole in it, and you can't get to Silent Hill via truck, and so somehow, it causes something to happen and people get stranded there. So in this case, the bus flips over, all the prisoners get either hurt or injured, or they all get freed. And so it follows the story of Murphy trying to figure out what he can do, gets into Silent Hill. All of a sudden, crazy shit starts happening regarding his past, regarding some of the skeletons in his closet revolving his dead son, including some things that he's done since he's been in prison. I don't want to ruin the story because primarily the best part about Silent Hill Downpour is the story. It's a gripping, suspenseful story that's revealed slowly over the course of the game. You really get to want to keep playing the game in order to get to the next part of the story and figure out what the heck's going on, what did Murphy really do to deserve to be tormented here in Silent Hill. You get to learn more about his past, about some of the horrible things that have happened to him, and some of the horrible things that he's done, and then other supporting characters also start to get tied into the story, including a corrections officer who was one of the cops on the bus when the bus flipped over, who he runs into several times during the course of the game. Now, the game has several different locations, primarily starting with the bus wreck, then a pit stop, which then leads to a actual, they call it Devil's Pit, which I guess is like a giant canyon, and a system of caves. Once you get out of there, you actually take a tram into Silent Hill, of which there are several different locations in Silent Hill. And the way that the game pans out is that it's basically a main location where you're stuck inside, you have to do a certain amount of things to get out. Once you get out, you go to a more open world feel, where you can explore around and do some side missions and maybe find some optional items. Once you're done with that, you go into another major building or major location, which again, you're stuck inside until you do a certain amount of things inside and the plot progresses, and then you're able to go to a new part of Silent Hill where it's open world again. And this happens several times during the course of the game. I believe there's actually 4 areas where you have free roam and 4 areas where you're kind of stuck inside of these areas to get plot progression. The combat of Silent Hill Downpour is pretty basic. It's exactly what you would expect. You're going to find items, whether it's a rock, a brick, or a one-handed weapon like a crowbar, or a two-handed weapon like a sledgehammer, which you're going to use to fight the enemies in Silent Hill, of which, to be completely honest, there are not a hell of a lot. There's probably, off the top of my head, maybe 6 or 7 different enemy types tops in the entire game. And yeah, it does kind of get repetitive. However, it is still kind of creepy. The combat's very simple. You're going to block enemy attacks and then try to counterattack. and it's very hit or miss, I have to say. It's a little annoying because there is a targeting system in the game by holding left trigger. Sometimes if you're fighting multiple enemies, it'll actually target the guy right in front of you, and sometimes it'll target the guy that's 20 fucking feet away in the background while the two other enemies run up and start beating the shit out of you. So the targeting system is a little bit of an annoyance in this game. I believe there is a way to switch between targets by using your right thumbstick. I can't confirm that simply because the instructions in this game are so freaking bare bones, it barely really describes anything about, how to really do things during combat. In fact, I can tell you right now, it says nothing about right thumbstick at all during combat in this instruction booklet. So a little bit frustrating there that the game has bare bones instructions and the combat is a little bit clunky, okay? Also, you'll find projectile weapons, meaning a handgun, a shotgun, that kind of deal during the game. And obviously you'll have to find ammo for these weapons. And, predictably, left trigger to auto-aim, and then right trigger to fire. You shoot, you knock down the enemy, okay? So nothing too complex there. Just pretty much basic survival horror combat when it comes down to it. Keep in mind Silent Hill is a lot more melee-oriented than other games such as Resident Evil, okay? And during the course of the game, as I said, you'll be exploring open world areas. There will be several mysteries and puzzles to solve. Now the puzzles in this game range from the most absolutely simplistic things you could see to your life to some of the most cryptic bullshit that you should probably never have to solve. And what I mean is, some puzzles are very simple. You're looking around a room, you use a flashlight, and you see 3 hidden numbers. Oh, that's the combination. You walk up to a safe, you put in the 3 numbers, you solve the puzzle. Other puzzles are so silly to the point where, like, one of them is a poem that kind of alludes to a couple colors, but it's not really clear what it's trying to say. And then you have to press colored buttons in order based off of a fucking poem. What? That is stupid. That, like, is a dumb puzzle. That is, like, you're going to have to just either by trial and error keep pressing it till it works, or guess, or look it up, which is what I did. I had the strategy guide for this game. I said, I'm not going to keep fucking with this. I'm just going to look it up. This is annoying. So, some of the puzzles are intuitive, some of them just make no fucking sense. But for the most part, the puzzles aren't that bad. I think it actually is worth saying that at the beginning of the game actually gives you the option to select both your game difficulty and puzzle difficulty. And what that means is the actual combat, how much damage enemies take from you, etc. is the game difficulty. And then the puzzle difficulty will actually either make the puzzles easier to solve by maybe having less digits to input into a puzzle or less items to find to solve a puzzle, or harder to solve by making it overly complicated. So you can basically adjust your difficulty at the beginning of the game, which I like. I thought it was a little bit odd that actually by default the game sets the game difficulty to easy and the puzzle difficulty to normal. I actually set them both to normal for my playthrough. I thought that was a little odd. And so you're going to have these puzzles that you're going to be doing. The game not only has a main quest line, which you'll progress through, as I said, by going to those major locations and doing a certain amount of actions to have the plot progress, but also has several side missions. I believe there's around a dozen side missions that you can do. And I have to say, some of them are pretty interesting. There's one about a murder mystery about how a woman was axe murdered by her husband, and you basically have to avenge her by killing off her husband's ghost and trapping him. There's some about like a dead woman who, if you spread her ashes at her favorite place, you can get a combination to open up a safe and get an item. So there's the side missions range in scope. Some of them are very simple. You can solve them within 5 minutes. Some of them are actually going to take you the course of the game to solve, because you have to find items all throughout the entire town of Silent Hill in order to actually complete the mission. Now, these side missions are completely optional. You can skip through all of them and it will not affect the plot of the game, the ending that you'll get of the game. The only real benefit you get out of these side missions is, number one, you get achievement points or trophies for completing them. And number two, you will probably get some really good items. For example, one of them gives you the golden gun, which is the absolute best gun in the game. One of them gives you the demon statue, which is the best one-handed melee weapon in the game. So that is the benefit of doing the side missions, basically getting items that are going to help you during the course of the regular plot of the game. So what do I think about the game? What did I enjoy? I have to say yes. The plot of Silent Hill, even the supporting characters that just kind of show up on the periphery for a little while, even though their stories don't get fleshed out all the way, which usually never really happens with Silent Hill games or survival horror games in general, but it's fun, it's creepy, very atmospheric, the graphics are done really well here, the music, the atmosphere, everything's really cool. And there are also some times where you actually transport between the real world and this other world that kind of looks like a hellish world. And there'll be chase sequences where you have to outrun this just blur of evil that's coming after you, and if it hits you, you die. So really suspenseful, some really cool things that are done in this game, and you really feel like a lot of the times you're getting transported to hell, okay? Where does the game shine, and where do I feel the game fails miserably, okay? The game shines, again, the story, the atmosphere. You're going to want to continue to keep playing this game because there's so many cool things going on. During the course of the game, you'll find pieces of paper scattered throughout. And what these are called are, I believe, like Murphy's journal notes or journal entries. And what these are pieces of the story of Silent Hill Downpour that really you have to read. Now, some people might say, oh, I don't want to sit there and read every scrap of paper that I pick up. But in this particular game, reading them really adds to the story. Similar to how in Alan Wake, you were finding pages of his story. Same thing here. You're going to find things, news articles, doctor reports, pictures, all kinds of things that add to the overall story, and if you don't read them, you actually are missing out on some of the story of the game, so I definitely recommend that you read those. And I think that they're well written, I think that the story is really gripping, and it really is awesome in that regards. I think the different locales, the first time that you get to them, really are a breath of fresh air, seeing like, okay, first you're inside of a cave, then you're inside of, I'm trying to remember what the first building was, I can't even really remember. I know one of them was like a mausoleum or a monastery, then a prison later on. So all kinds of cool places that you can go in this game. And some of the side missions are really fun. Like some of the clever things, like there's this one mission where you're staring into a mirror and things in the mirror are different from things in the real world, so you have to manipulate things in the real world to make it look like the mirror reflection. So really clever things they did with the puzzles and the side quests in this game, and I really enjoyed those, okay? Some things that I think they fail at, okay? Number one, the combat, as I said, is clunky. It's kind of annoying that sometimes you can't select the right enemy, sometimes you'll swing for an enemy and you miss, there's really no way to be for sure that you're going to hit an enemy. It is a little bit of a pain in the ass. Definitely, the frame rate has big issues here. And what I mean is that during certain portions of the game, and it's odd because it doesn't seem to be the same portion of the game all the time, it seems to be different things going on during the game, the frame rate will just freeze. The game will freeze for a second, then unfreeze, and be choppy for a couple seconds, and then go back to normal. And it's really annoying in some parts of the game. Some parts, it just doesn't bother you at all because you're in the middle of the street by yourself. Who cares? But if you're in the middle of running from an enemy, or chasing, being chased, or fighting an enemy, which happened to me a couple times and the frame rate dips, that's frustrating. I don't know what they were thinking, how they didn't know that that happened, okay? Another thing that really pissed me off was some of the checkpoints. Some of the checkpoints in this game are excellent. The way the game works is you can't manually save. The game will auto-save when you reach certain portions of the game. And it seemed like certain checkpoints were really well done. So you'd be in an action sequence or a puzzle sequence. If you die during it, it'll start you out back just one step backwards from that puzzle, which is great. But other portions, including mostly it's the chase sequences and the final boss fight of the game, if you die anywhere during them, you have to start from the beginning of the sequence. So if you're in a chase sequence and you're running for 3 minutes and then you die, you have to start 3 minutes back, which is like, what the fuck? Why were there no checkpoints during this sequence? Same thing with the final boss fight. And the final boss fight can take up to 10 minutes to get through. If you die anywhere during it, you start from the beginning of the boss fight. There's no checkpoints during that. So it's really weird. It's almost like two different people made the checkpoints in this game. One person knew what they were doing and made really nice, pertinent, useful checkpoints so you don't have to replay a lot of gameplay. And other people just fucking put way too few checkpoints during key moments of the game. And it's really confusing why they did that. And I really am just confused as to what the hell happened there. But by far my number one complaint about the game, and this might not be something that everyone experiences, but it is a major problem for people who pre-ordered the game. There is a critical inventory bug in this game that fucks it up, okay? And the way that the game's supposed to work is that at all times you can carry two weapons. One melee weapon and one projectile weapon, or two projectile weapons, okay? It's like a shotgun and a handgun. Well, the game completely bugs out in a certain scenario. If you pre-ordered Silent Hill Downpour at GameStop, and I'm not sure if it is anywhere else, but I pre-ordered at GameStop. I got a code to enter at a certain locker that gave me the nail gun. Now, the nail gun is not available in the normal game. You can only get it through this DLC code. And it works just like a handgun, and you find ammo through it through the course of the game, and it's really useful a lot of different parts of the game. The problem is, the nail gun is bugged. The nail gun does not act like a normal handgun. There are times in the game when you may be out of ammo for it, and you want to get rid of it. Well, guess what? The nail gun permanently stays in your inventory. And because of that, it leads to a critical inventory bug. What I mean is this. You can never, at any time, have a different projectile weapon in place of the nail gun. You are always stuck with the nail gun. And so you either have the nail gun and a gun, or the nail gun and a melee weapon. You can never have a melee weapon and a different gun in your inventory because you can never get rid of the nail gun. It's permanently stuck there. And this fucks you over later on in the game, especially when you start to find more powerful projectile weapons, such as the shotgun and the golden gun, which is the best gun in the game. So let me give you an idea what happened to me, because this is what happened in my playthrough. So I had the nail gun, but then I found the golden gun. And I said, well, the golden gun is the most powerful gun in the game. I want to use the golden gun. So I tried to drop the nail gun. No matter what I did, I couldn't get rid of it. So I said, all right, I'll just keep the golden gun in my hand and use it for combat, and then I'll have the nail gun as a secondary. Problem. Whenever you try to switch to the nail gun, the game forces you to drop the gun in your hand. So I had to keep dropping the golden gun on the floor, which was really frustrating. Why is it forcing me to do that? Why can't I put that gun in my inventory? In addition, there are certain parts of the game that require you to use certain melee weapons to open certain doors. There are some doors that are boarded off with like planks, and you need to use like a fire axe, such a sharp weapon, to chop through it and get inside. Well, guess what? You won't believe it. When you pick up that melee weapon, whatever, projectile weapon you have in your inventory that's not the nail gun drops. So I had the golden gun. At one point in the game, I had to pick up a fire axe to free up a door. So I had to drop the golden gun where I had it. I ran over, I opened the door. When I went back to get my golden gun, that room that I was in had vanished as part of the story or the plot of the game. It had vanished to creep you out, but I permanently lost the best gun in the whole fucking game. So this nail gun, which is supposed to be a bonus for people who pre-ordered the game, actually fucks with the game and fucks up the inventory system. So it's actually more of a hindrance than a help in the long run, especially if you find better weapons, and it really pissed me off. So really, when it comes down to it, Silent Hill Downpour is a mixed bag. Overall, I really enjoyed the game. I think it's definitely one of the best survival horror games in the past couple of years. It blows away shitty games like Amy, that was basically attempting to be something like this and failed miserably. This game is what Amy should have been, okay? Now, that being said, as you know, I'm not part of the mainstream gaming media, but I keep my eye on it. Sites like IGN, sites like GameSpot. IGN panned this game and gave it an extremely low score. I believe it was like a 4 or a 4.5 or something like that. Silent Hill Downpour is not a bad game. Despite a couple bugs, it is an enjoyable game. The story is great, the atmosphere is great, and it's fun, and it's a pretty good game. If you like survival horror games, this game is right up your alley. You're going to enjoy it. So now we're going to talk about what I said earlier in this video. I really feel that these modern day reviewers, especially these particular ones for these mainstream sites, try to hold these games up to this ridiculous standard of nostalgia that they feel for these original games. Now, everyone, by right, says that Silent Hill 2 and 3 are the best survival horror games ever made. A lot of people say that. I've never played them. That was the era of games where I was heavily into competitive Street Fighter, so I didn't play them. So I don't know. I can't give you a reference. But what I can tell you is this. I just recently played Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, the HD remakes of these games. And I can understand playing them, why people hold them up as the best, these amazing classics, and why people love them and say that they're some of the best games ever made. At the same time, in today's world, the gameplay's outdated, the controls are clunky, and there's a lot of issues with these games compared to modern games, okay? I would be willing to bet that Silent Hill 2 and 3, with their gameplay mechanics, probably have issues when it comes to modern games, with their checkpoint systems, with their more modern combat systems, and so on and so forth. So in order to sell a game in this day and age to an audience it's going to appeal to not just this small niche of people, You need to make it more mainstream. So I can understand why maybe the combat isn't super difficult, why you have adjustable difficulties, why there is a lot of first aid kits if you look around for them. Now you have to look for them, but yeah, I never really was low on health in this game because I was searching everywhere and I found a shit ton of first aid kits. I can understand why there's enough ammo, why it's not that difficult to do certain things. Because if the game was insanely fucking hard, it would be hard to sell the game, okay? I'm not going to fault the game for being a modern game, okay? I understand. There are schools of people who like these insanely difficult games like Dark Souls. They can go play those games. Silent Hill Downpour is trying to take the Silent Hill style of survival horror game and bring it into the mainstream and make it appeal to more people. I feel the atmosphere, the gameplay, the story, all these things shine in this game, and this game is not a bad game. For someone to say, Silent Hill Downpour is not as good as Silent Hill 2, it's a 4.5, is a completely fucking asinine review. It has nothing to do with the quality of this particular game in general, and it doesn't compare this game to other games out there today and tell you if it's even any good to buy. This game was fun from start to finish for me, albeit a couple annoying game bugs, and it's a great game. It shouldn't be held back because some fucking stupid-ass reviewer is being nostalgic about a game 10 years old, and if it really were to be reviewed today and was to be released today, probably would be panned by the same fucking critics. So it's not fair, and these people need to get their thumbs out of their fucking asses and learn how to do their jobs properly. So in my opinion, Silent Hill Downpour, for what it's attempting to do, be a fun survival horror game with a suspenseful atmosphere that appeals to the masses, it definitely succeeds in that. Now, does it have faults? Absolutely. It's not the best game of the year. It's not an amazingly great game. And it definitely doesn't redefine the survival horror genre of gaming. But what it does do is put a solid installment into the Silent Hill franchise, and it's a lot of fun. So, for me, Silent Hill Downpour, a pretty good game. Not an amazing game, but it's still fun. If you're a fan of the survival horror style game, you're gonna like this game. I give it a 7.5 out of 10 on my rating system. So again, maximum truth, minimum bullshit. I'm cutting through all the favoritistic, nostalgic bullshit that these stupid mainstream reviewers are telling you. This game is pretty good. It's worth checking out if you like survival horror games. Definitely do so. Okay? That being said, the fact that there's game bugs, the fact that there's really no replayability besides getting... There are actually, I should mention this last thing in the review. There are 6 possible endings you can get. They are determined by 3 critical choices you make during the course of the game that are morality choices. And they're also determined whether or not you slaughter the enemies you fight or you give them mercy. And what I mean is, if you knock down a lot of the enemies in the game, they stay down. They can't get up, but they're not necessarily dead. If you slaughter them on the ground, that's a negative point for your morality. If you spare them, that's a positive point for your morality, okay? And some enemies, unfortunately, will make the game harder if you spare them because they do eventually get up and chase you again. But for the most part, it's not that big of a deal. So if you have enough morality points by the end of the game, and the last morality choice of the game can actually shift your ending, you can get 4 different endings, depending on if you have positive or negative morality, and you make one choice or the other. And then also, there's a portion of the game where if you die, it's actually a special ending. And then after you beat the game, an additional side mission actually opens up that you can go do after you beat the game. And if you do that side mission, you actually get a different ending. So there's 6 different endings to the game. That does add to the replayability of the game, especially if you're into the Silent Hill style of game and you want to get all the endings. I think that's pretty neat. However, for someone like me, who I just really want to play through the game once, there's really no reason to ever go back. It's not like there's any challenge modes, no online play, obviously. It's just the story of the game, and obviously, that's good enough for me. So really not a lot of replayability. That's another thing that factored into my score of 7.5 out of 10. Okay. So I hope now you have an idea of what Silent Hill Downpour is like. I hope you understand whether or not you're going to like this game or not. If you're a hardcore fucking, I love Silent Hill 2 and nothing else will ever hold a candle to it, you probably won't like it. But if you're willing to go on a cool ride, a fun survival horror plot, suspense, action, thrills, some scares, this is your game. Okay? And obviously, yes, it is a modernized game. It's not as difficult or as clunky as some of those previous installments of survival horror games. That's it for The Hateful Truth. I hope that you found it informative. Maximum truth, minimum bullshit as always. And I will see you next time for another review. Thanks.